Good afternoon, everybody. This is Delivering Liberty, bringing you unprecedented TP. I hope everybody is well in the house. I hope we're all having a good afternoon so far. That was a great show by Basil Valentine there that was just on before me with ex-MI5 agent David Shayler. I hope our upcoming guest, we're going to have a quite interesting character. We're going to be having a chap called Jason Bermas, who is a former InfoWars presenter and creator of Loose Change, something to do with 9/11. So we're going to have him on at some point soon, whenever he wishes to join us. Obviously, we're going to be talking about some of the America over across the pond, about the American side, especially. I watched Trump's speech at the UN. See, even without a teleprompter, Trump is actually quite hilarious. There was a bit of a 2015, 2016 era Trump that a lot of people kind of fell in love with. But I think he's obviously getting a bit on now. Trump is near 80. He's not exactly in peak health at the moment. There's a lot of questions about his health generally. There's a lot of makeup being seen on his hands, etc. So we're going to be asking about that. Plus, obviously, the InfoWars fallout, possibly about Owen Schroyer leaving InfoWars. That just before Charlie Kirk's death, there was a bit of hoo-ha about, obviously, Schroyer leaving. I've always preferred Owen Schroyer over to Alex Jones personally. But we'll get Jason's opinion on that. I don't know if Jason and Owen Schroyer are friends. I don't know whether they have good relations. I'm not 100% sure. So, but we're going to be going into that. So, meanwhile, whilst we're awaiting our guest, yesterday, I was actually in Liverpool. I was actually at the Labour Party conference. I was there. I was Piers Corbyn. Thank you, Carl Miz. Hey, Sean, hope you're well. Thank you. Yes, I am well. I was passing by my van life adventures, and I got a message from Piers Corbyn saying that he would be in Liverpool outside the conference. Obviously, only Labour Party members are allowed in, and it's been quite a hit hole, I'll say. Not a good one indeed. But basically, I think now I've got my opinions on this. I think that a lot of this, I've said this before on this show previously, is that I do believe that a lot of I know there's well-intentioned people who turn up to the hotel protest, especially over the recent couple of months at Epping and Bournemouth. And I think a lot of it is manufactured in the sense that it is obviously on people's minds. It is a great concern that these strangers, essentially, these outsiders are coming in and they are basically given a hotel refuge and all of the taxpayers' money. And we don't know who these individuals are. And obviously there's different cultures, there's different customs. And it is a great concern. However, I've gone into more of the macro rather than the micro of looking at that and seen that a lot of these individuals that are coming over, who are mostly mostly Muslim culture rather than religion, I would say culturally religious, just like how the Italian mafia are culturally Catholic. But just because they go to church on Sunday doesn't excuse what they do on the weekdays when they're going around killing and stealing from people. But these people are culturally Catholic. They're not religious. I do believe the same thing with a lot of these Muslim individuals, is that yes, they are brought up in a Islamic household, etc., and all of this, but it's only a cultural thing. So when people such as Tommy Robinson, etc., would say, "Oh, they're only here to invade us, and it's all about Islamic conquest," I don't think that's actually true. That's a very childlike understanding of the bigger picture of what is going on. What I do believe it is obviously There are people. We have Israel in the Middle East that are obsessed with this Greater Israel project. They want to basically empire build. They want to basically steal land, expansion of their territories, their borders, and they need to do this. And by doing so, they'll make the neighboring lands that are included in this Greater Israel project. They want to make it a totally unhospitable, basically not a great place to live. So they do bomb these lands. They do cause all of this aggro. You see it in Gaza right now, the focal point of it. And they're just making life extremely hard to live. And these people eventually will give up, and they will eventually just go, do you know what? Even though these are my homelands, my lands are getting bombed all the time. I'm just sick of it. And they just become demoralized and go, I just give up. And they leave. And then with the help of these NGOs that are usually linked to Israel and other Western countries, they then start the great journey of eventually ending up in Europe, whether that be at Dover or at the UK or wherever else in Europe. And people do not see what is going on because they're listening to these, in my opinion, controlled talking heads, like I've mentioned Tommy before, and they're paid by really Israel-linked individuals and organizations to basically tell you a narrative that is not true, or at least it's half true. And they don't tell you the full picture about the Greater Israel project. They don't talk about quotes, well-known quotes out there by Israeli officials and rabbis that Islam is the broom of Israel, meaning that basically they use Muslims as weapons to basically bolster distraction from what Israel is essentially doing. So then it ends up in the hotel stuff. So, and then it becomes the flag issue about the flag being, it's an offense to fly the UK or British flag, UK flag. And it furthers the hostilities. And this is all about because there's a lot of people in the Palestine protests that are flying, obviously, Palestine flags. And I think that the Zionists, the Israelis, the greater control, the power brokers of the West, as David Clue says of UNN, is that they do not like this. So instead, what they do is they go, right, we need another flag to combat the Palestinian flag. And that's obviously using the UK and St. George's flag to do so. And it's all to get people's backs up. It's all to cause great division and ultimately distract you from what Israel is actually doing and causing the mass migration in the first place. When I look at stuff like this is what happened on Sunday at the outside the Labour Party conference, or at least nearby it. And you had a 16-year-old girl, this is UNN reporting, a 16-year-old girl has her flag snatched from her hands by a police officer. This officer is scum and should be sacked immediately. So keeping in mind as well that the police who wear blue, as in like the blue high vis as this individual is wearing, as this copper is wearing, these are supposed to be police liaison officers. They're supposed to be the peace, the people who are meant to broker peace, communicate with protests. They're meant to be basically nicer police officers, essentially. So when let's just watch this, and I will give you my opinion. Give me what in the chat here, please do. I'm live from UNN. Sorry about that. I'm live from Delivering Liberty's YouTube channel and Unprecedented's YouTube channel, plus Unprecedented TV's X account on Twitter. So if people want to put, please do give me your opinions on what, and anything on what I'm saying, or whether you disagree with me or agree with me, and give me your opinion on this. So keep in mind all of the stuff I've just spoken about the Greater Israel Project, all of that. Think about when you see stuff like this, and I'll give you my opinion on it, but I think I know what people already know what I'm already thinking.
should bring it here. Not getting it.
Should I get a flag back?
No.
Why not? This is Louis, yeah.
Yeah.
16 years old. Just had the flag that you've been carrying snatched out your hand by that police officer. Shocking, isn't it? I know.
How they all got their flags and where's my flag gone?
Crazy scenes.
So when I see stuff like this, and especially when you understand what is going on in this world with the mass migration, like I do stress to people this simple message. If you support Israel, if you support people like Tommy Robinson, you are actually supporting mass immigration. Because Tommy is ultimately controlled by Israel. Israel are bombing the lands that they want included in this Greater Israel project in order for people to leave those lands and make them easier to conquer. Those people, essentially Israel, export their enemies out of the Middle East and they send them here and Europe and most of the other West as well. So if you are supporting these people and actions, you are supporting mass immigration. You may turn up to hotel protests and think that you're doing great work, and that's not me to mock people, but these people don't realize that they're being used, and they don't realize that they're being led down a garden path that is ultimately further ruination to their country. They think that they're doing something counter. They think they're being counter protest. They're doing something that is trying to stop this. They're actually helping the problem worsen. So when I see this, then I can't help but feel, and again, call me a conspiracy theorist, that this is somewhat staged. I don't know. I feel as though that this, I'm not saying that the young girl is not part of it. What I mean is at least partly staged, in the sense that we need to get a police officer, a dangerous order follower, to basically, I'm not a fan of the police store. People don't know this on Unprecedented TV. Is that they are going to order someone to basically snatch a flag and do it in front of large public, with a lot of media attention or that. I mean, this is meant to be a police liaison officer and do this. Why would a police liaison officer actually do this? They would normally want to talk as well. This is apparently the individual here. Police officer 2662, theft and assault equals aggravated robbery. This is a buddy who snatched a young girl's flag in Newcastle. It was in Newcastle. Sorry, I'm thinking it was in Liverpool. Excuse me. I mean, look, this just to sort of just hop away from that for a second. It's like this. Keeping in mind, I've said this theory before. Is that the real reason why Farage and Reform are having this Rupert Lowe / Ben Habib and the slop merchant YouTube accounts attack Reform UK is not because that they're too soft, but it's because they're not Zionistic enough, Reform UK. Now, most of the slot merchants and all that, they don't realize that they're being used, or a lot of people are just so hopelessly caught in that left versus right divide that they can't see the woods through the trees. They can't understand what is actually going on because either they do not have the mental capability to understand the bigger picture, or because they have been successfully conditioned, that they've been tricked, essentially. They've been hoodwinked. All three. They recognize this, but obviously there's a lot of money, a lot of grifting opportunities to be made in the left versus right divide. It's like how people try. I was watching a Russell Brand video just yesterday, and I didn't realize just how much of a Trump shill is Russell Brand. He was really celebrating Trump and his speech at the UN. Building the other day, which was indeed a funny speech. Don't get me wrong, I was laughing. I'm not a person who's got Trump derangement syndrome, I'm a person who does give what I like to think an objective opinion on it. The left versus right is the puppet show. The real battle is for your freedom. As I've said here, it's like slavery affected all people throughout history. It is simply not about race. They don't want you to know about this. And it's obviously a video about how every race, including white people, were a slave at some point. The controllers, I've simply called them, want you to focus on black slavery to keep us divided, similar to the left versus right divide to keep us at each other's throats. By choosing either left or right, you become a slave to the system. We need to put these differences aside and focus on our true enemies. This is what the controllers truly fear. And I always use reference to the freedom, the anti-lockdown marches and that era from 2020 to 2022, I would say from its peak, that these, that what really feared, what was really, what you want to call them, the powers that shouldn't be, the establishment, what they actually feared was that type of unity. Is that there's that people did put aside all of these differences and they came out for a common goal. And that's why there wasn't any big media attention. That wasn't why there was a all-out lie to cover up the amount of people that were turning out to those protests, not just in the UK, but worldwide. So we've got Richard Tice here, keeping in mind, Reform are most likely, I think, possibly going to be the next government. The recent announcement that there was going to be a digital ID by Keir Starmer is the policy is so appallingly bad, and the advice to basically make an announcement about this. Keir Starmer is due to speak tomorrow at the Labour Party conference. We'll see whether he U-turns, or we'll see how it goes. But basically, I believe personally is that advice was given to Keir Starmer by the civil service, who are really the permanent government, because it doesn't really matter who is the prime minister or what minister is running what department. These civil servant ministers, these civil servant advisors, they are there permanently. They've been there for decades. They've seen all sorts of ministers and prime ministers come and go. They are the people who last there forever, and they obviously have their agendas. They have their goals. I cannot help but think that the reason why Keir Starmer has announced that digital ID is to further bolster support for reform. That the UK state, well, where did I put it? I wrote a little summary of it. Because only a few months ago, keeping in mind, photo ID to vote, Keir Starmer was against it, just to simply provide evidence, provide like a driver's license, let's say, photo ID to go in to prove that you can vote. Now, ultimately, I do not care about voting anymore. I don't care whether you have to produce a photo card to ID or whether you do not. I think ultimately the whole exercise of putting an X in a box is totally pointless. It's just to appease people to think that they have some kind of power when ultimately they don't. But yet, digital ID, which is a greater threat to civil liberties, no doubt, he wants, but no photo ID. So I think obviously this is going to, it would mean that I would imagine the digital ID would be used as well as a form of proof to vote as well. But he's essentially done a U-turn. These people will read any script given to them by the civil service and state advisors, no matter how much it contradicts their previous statements. They are total puppet people. In my opinion, this is all to usher in Nigel Farage and Reform UK as the approved dissidents to appease the ever-growing displeased public. A pressure valve solution by the state in which nothing meaningful will ever change in the UK for the people. So, as Reform, like how people fall, I mean, think about this. Do people in the chat generally believe that Reform and Farage will do anything meaningful? Please keep in mind that that before Trump got in America, we were promised a golden age, or at least the American people were promised a golden age where there will be no more wars. The war Russia-Ukraine will end within 24 hours or 48 hours of he's there. The Epstein files will be released. There'll be no new wars. Even though there's been attack by America or Middle Eastern countries. So this is Trump, who is far more, how would you say it, far more bombastic, far more of a loose cannon than Nigel Farage will ever be. Do people honestly believe that Nigel Farage is actually going to change anything in this country? At least anything meaningful? There'll be some approved things that he is allowed to do ultimately, but really it will be like slop sort of stuff, like we're going to reintroduce the national anthem. Children will have to sing the national anthem, or they'll introduce the British flag into school, so they'll be able to fly the Union flag. I mean, who gives a damn? Who really cares about these things? Are these things going to change our lives for the better just by flying a flag in a classroom or outside of it? I mean, some people go, yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, it might be nice. Yes, I'm not disagreeing or agreeing that it would be nice either way. But the point is, it wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't do anything that is going to actually better our lives. There's still going to be massive inflation. The central banks are going to be running wild. There's going to be wars. I mean, when I went to the Liverpool Labour Party conference yesterday. I mean, I'm not being funny, but there was one leaflet given to us by many of the. There was obviously many opportunist people out there giving out their leaflets that was loose, some of them even loosely politically related. But one of the leaflets was, we need to introduce links, as in the big cats. We need to introduce links back into England. And I'm just thinking, like, what? Who cares? Like, what? How? There are way more bigger things going on in the country than worrying about. We need to reintroduce the links back into the. I don't know, the English countryside or something. I don't quite, whatever it was. Pointless stuff. Another one saying we have to protect the badgers. We've got to save the badgers. And it's like, well, there's a lot more other things going on than we have to worry about some badgers. So right now, at this particular point in time, we have the deputy leader of Reform. So my theory about Rupert Lowe, about this whole, it's basically Elon Musk, obviously behind, appearing at the Tommy March a few weeks ago. And it's all of this, I think, a purposely created opposition to Farage to put coal under his feet, to put fire up his arse, basically to be more slavishly Zionistic. And it's essentially all about that. Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform, and will therefore be the deputy prime minister. Well, if Farage choosing to be deputy prime minister, Richard Tice saying, I am in Israel having important meetings with ambassadors, diplomats, foreign minister, SARS, or whatever that is, hostage families, Nova survivors, and hugely successful entrepreneurs, confirming that we at Reform UK stand strong with Israel and look forward to working closely together after we win the next general election, apologising for the appalling betrayal by Labour. So essentially, what people are going to get, yes, they're going to get little scraps off the table of, yes, there's going to be a UK flag outside every school, let's say, for example, and other sort of pointless kind of almost virtue signalling like gestures, like the right version of virtue signaling, if again, to use the old archaic language. I hate using left and right, but their version of virtue signaling. And ultimately, nothing's going to change. We're still going to be slaves, I think, to Israel. I think that there's going to be more money borrowing. There's going to be no thinking of balancing the books whatsoever due to our deficit or due to our debt and borrowing. There's going to be nothing more of that. So you're just going to get, basically, it's almost like a car that has major engine problems. And instead of focusing on that, we are focusing on little things, like we're focusing on the minor dents of the car, or we're focusing on perhaps the wing mirror, replacing the wing mirror, or something, all of these minor jobs, but the ultimate problem with the vehicle, the major problem with it, never gets resolved. and therefore the car becomes absolutely useless, despite all of the cosmetic repairs that are being done on the vehicle. So we have that. We have that at the moment. We have had the Labour Party at the moment with the conference. They are focusing on race. They are constantly been focusing on furthering that divide, again with the flag stuff as well. They are furthering the divide of race. Let's listen to a few. I'm going to get a guest on after as well. I see he's in the studio. There has been clearly, to further fuel the race division, we have a lot of virtue signaling from Labour. Attorney General, I won't read that in a moment. Everything I don't like is racist, says Starmer. So let's just listen to this, see what he has to say.
It's one thing to say we're going to remove illegal migrants, people who have no right to be here. I'm up for that. It is a completely different thing to say we're going to reach in to people who are lawfully here and start removing them. They are our neighbours. They're people who work in our economy. They are part of who we are. It will rip this country apart. And if you're patriotic, you want to serve the whole of your country, everybody in your country, and have an ability to bring that country together and walk forward towards the challenges. You cannot do that if you are divisive, if you only truly want to serve a section of our country. And that's why the fight with reform is different. Most elections have always been Labour or Conservative. This is a different election that we're facing. We have not had a proposition like reform in this country ever before. We've seen it in France and Germany and plenty of other countries. This is a different fight. It is a fight about who we are as a country. It goes to the soul of our future. It will be heard, and the effects will be there for generations. And that's why I'm saying to my party, it's all very well navel gazing, but we've got a big argument to make here. We've got a big fight that we've got to be in, and we've got to win that fight.
You said that proposal is immoral to deport people who are already here if they don't pass more stringent rules. Do you think it's a racist policy?
Well, I do think it is a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
Do you think that Reform UK is trying to appeal to racists?
No.
So that's basically what we've got going on, furthering the race divide, furthering it. It's actually quite sick how these political parties, how they use race, basically. Someone here, there's only one race, the human race. Okay. We had Home Secretary Mahmood say that for some patriotism in the UK is sliding into ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that people like me, let's just hear what she has to say.
Patriotism, a force for good, is turning into something smaller, something more like ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that someone who looks like me and has a faith like mine can truly be English or British. There are some who we will never be able to persuade, but there are others, a growing number, who are on a path from patriotism towards ethno-nationalism. And this can be stopped. But to do so, we have to understand why so many people feel this country is not working for them. Because the truth is, across this country, people feel like things are spinning out of control. And without control, we simply do not have the conditions in which our country can be open, tolerant, and generous. When people see small boats arriving on our shores, they see a country that has lost control. When they hear of widespread illegal working, undercutting British workers, they feel the system is rigged. And when they see crime unchecked on unsafe streets, they feel fearful.
So this is a party that not that I'm a fan of the Conservatives at all, but this is all designed, especially as the Home Secretary, where they choose an Islamic woman to run the interior business of the UK, essentially. this is, again, to get people's backs up. There is a bigger agenda here. I hope people just don't get played by this. Now, obviously, people like her are scum as well, in the sense that they purposely do this to cause division between people of other races and stuff. Now, I'm a race realist. I'm not some bleeding heart liberal, whatever you want to call them, like one of those individuals. I'm a person that does believe that race is real. However, that we can put our differences aside, as we saw in the anti-lockdown marches. We can put our differences aside and see a greater enemy. They don't want that. Obviously, they want to cause more division, because if we're all fighting each other, we're not fighting our true enemy. And they put people like, they put race baiters like this individual, like this Home Secretary, in order to further fuel that. The whole of the Labour Party conference has been basically about race. It's about, headline here from the Daily Mail, rattled Starmer to renew attack on Farage as racism row splits party. PM will tell conference country faces defining choice between the centre and division. Keir Starmer today warned the country faces a defining choice between division and splits emerged as the top of his party over whether reform is racist. In the keynote speech to Labour's conference today, the rattled Prime Minister will double down on his attacks on Nigel Farage. Sir Keir Starmer will liken the fight for the soul of Britain to rebuilding the country after the war. So the whole time it's been about that. It's about race. It's constantly focusing on that. Attorney General Hemmer is casually referring to far-right populism. So this is the Attorney General keeping in mind. This is why we have two-tier justice, with the likes of him, Sackman and Mahmood run the judiciary. He had a hand gesture. It's funny, when he announced the digital ID, he actually literally did the...
Spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
I do think that this, again, is to usher in Nigel Farage. I think that he ultimately, that Farage won't be able to get anything done. Tory party with rife with bigots. You've got Priti Patel there advertising one of the things. So, and this is what I mean. Like people like this who do have good intentions, right? They are simply being played. Another overlooked and underutilized British brain surgeon. Again, people who turn up these hotel protests, they're good people, but they don't realize that they are being manipulated and used. But anyway, we're going to add our guest on now to the show, and we're going to be talking about some of the politics across the pond in his land of America. So I'm going to welcome to the show Jason. Jason, how are you?
Very good. How are we doing?
I'm very good, thank you. You're Jason Bermas, obviously joining the show. Obviously, I remember you from the days of InfoWars. Weren't you ex presenter on it, or at least you had some vignettes or something of it. I remember seeing your face on it.
Yeah, I was the first person to ever have a show on InfoWars outside of Alex Jones, all the way back in 2009. So time definitely flies.
Yes, it's good to see you. It's good to see you again. So Jason, like, obviously there's been a lot of a lot of news from the US of late. There's been quite obviously ever since, I think one of the big controversies was obviously from the Epstein files not being released, and then obviously now you recently have had Charlie Kirk. What's your take on all of this that's been going on in America over the last couple of months now?
Well, it really depends. Obviously the Epstein thing, that's something that I was covering all the way back in those InfoWars days when the Palm Beach case started, and something that I've really been covering since then. I think as far as the revelations recently, number one, I don't know why anybody was holding their breath thinking they were actually going to get the Epstein files. I mean, there were a lot of people that eventually came into this administration that went on podcasts and talked tough and eventually got spots within this administration, you know, including people like Kash Patel, who actually walked off my show when I brought up the signature reduction program. You had people like Dan Bongino, and even Pam Bondi alluded to it once she was in the administration. But I always tell people, just go back to the Fox News interview prior to his election, where he was not just asked about Epstein, but he was asked about JFK, RFK, MLK. We got some documents. I still, in my heart of hearts, know that, in fact, facts on my heart of hearts, it's factually, I know we did not get all of the JFK documents. And how do I know that? Because I covered the releases all the way back in 2017, and through my research on that, there were some documents that were related to a man named Warren C. DeBrew, who was an FBI field chief and who also happened to be Oswald's FBI handler. Now, the reason that I say that is that you had another one of his informants come out. He was a bar owner in New Orleans. He had seen DeBrew with Oswald many times, went on the record. He was even in the 1970s, I believe it was CBS about it. And then my research into DeBrew, I found out not only from those 2017 documents that he tailed Oswald to Dallas prior to the Kennedy assassination. So not only was he handling him as an informant, but then he follows him to Dallas. And then through an internal FBI publication, you find out that DeBrew was in charge of the quote unquote initial overnight investigation into the Kennedy assassination that was over 800 pages. Well, I assure you those 800 pages have still not been released. Going back to that said interview, when Trump was asked specifically about the Epstein files, he was extremely hesitant and never.
I remember it. I do remember it. He said, "Not so much that one. That's not so much that one. He might be."
Now he did promise 9/11 files, and we did, and not a whisper from anybody on any of the 9/11, which are as important, if not more important. The Epstein files are extremely important for numerous reasons, just outside of the high-level sexual abuse of women and children. The real meat and potatoes there is that you have a guy who is clearly embedded in the intelligentsia networks of Western intelligence via the Central Intelligence Agency here, British intelligence overseas, but of also Israeli intelligence, and that network goes back to Iran-Contra, because the big thing that nobody seems to want to discuss about Epstein is that he was an arms dealer. Everybody's asking where his money came from. It's very apparent. He was cutting arms deals. That's why he was doing business with Adnan Khashoggi, notorious arms dealer from Iran-Contra. What else did Adnan Khashoggi have? He had a harem of women and girls. If you think that all of Khashoggi's women were overage, just go back to that time period and take a cursory look. Hey, guess what? Prince Andrew, the United Kingdom's arms dealer. Okay, anybody who looks into Andrew, that was his gig. In fact, WikiLeaks published many documents on his BAE deals that were behind the scenes. Ehud Barak, who is, making more and more into the media, that relationship. He was not only the prime minister, he was the Israeli defense minister. Now, there's a video, anybody can go watch it. Most people are totally unaware of it. Comedian Lewis Black, few years back on the We Might Be Drunk podcast, when there was another big interest.
That's a great name for a podcast. That's a good name.
It's a funny one. I like to laugh. A couple comedians run it. And again, they had Lewis Black on. And Lewis Black was talking about his one time going to the New York mansion of Epstein. He was invited there by his manager. He went with other comedians. Other famous people were also there, including David Blaine. If you saw Massey talking to Patel, he mentioned the magician. That's Blaine. The really interesting thing that Lewis Black said is his interaction with Epstein was super weird, and Epstein had pulled him into a room, and he had a whiteboard up on that. He asked Louis Black, do you know what that is? Louis Black, of course, did not know what that is. Epstein says, I was discussing weapon systems with the Israeli defense minister last night. Okay? You're not discussing weapon systems with the Israeli defense minister unless you're brokering those deals. Now, don't get me wrong. There was a lot more to it than that. The blackmail aspect is very, very real. The intelligence asset is very, very real. But we have a long history in this country of not talking about the arms dealing going on with foreign governments, by the way, in this country. Let me just give you a quick example right here. This is Sidney Pollack. You might recognize him as the bad guy from the Eyes Wide Shut film, okay? So Sidney Pollack here was a gun runner. He wasn't just a Hollywood actor and producer, and he was doing it for who? Israel. You know who else was working with him? Arnon Milken, Israeli spy, big-time Hollywood producer, arms dealer, okay? It's a fact. These people, okay, have been totally unaccountable. We're seeing an extension of that even right now as Trump speaks before the quote-unquote Department of War. And you had Bibi Netanyahu here yesterday. Netanyahu literally went on the global stage, okay, and said 90% of Palestinians celebrated the October 7th attack. Therefore, everybody's a target. You know, the kids, the women, the children, 90% of them. He talked about them dancing and celebrating on October and throwing out candy. And then he said the same thing about the 9/11 attacks. Okay. Anybody who's looked into the 9/11 attacks knows that Israel had a prominent role in those attacks, although not a sole role. If you watch my film, Fabled Enemies, that was actually produced by InfoWars and Alex Jones, you will clearly see that 9/11 was an international intelligence operation, like so many of these are, like Iran-Contra was, which we'll get to in a second. This one had role players in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and within our own government and continuity of government program. And when I talk about Iran-Contra, one of the things, in fact, one of the most important things that is absolutely never discussed or acknowledged, it is in my film Invisible Empire, also produced by InfoWars and put out in that time period. It was the follow-up. We didn't buy the guns. And when I say we, I mean the United States. You know who bought the guns? Israel bought the guns. Israel bought the guns from Czechoslovakia and another Western European nation. They then shipped them to Bolivia and then into South America. So it was this plausible deniability circle. So after we were shipping up payments into the United States with drugs and other contraband, we would then pay Israel back through Mark Rich and others on the back market. So this alliance, this network of U.S., Israeli, Western intelligence has been around for decades. It has been almost completely unaccountable. And a lot of people can't wrap their minds around that because at the same time, just like the United States carries out espionage against every other nation out there, Israel does the same, even to their allies. And in fact, you not only had Israeli, I guess you could call them intelligence assets. It's really hard. They were trained by the IDF, some of them in explosives. Many of them refer to the quote unquote dancing Israelis. I don't love that term. I don't know that they were dancing, certainly celebrating.
Yes.
They weren't the only Israelis picked up that day. Okay. You had a separate van that exploded on King Street in New York on police radio that nobody talks about. Anybody can listen to that police radio in Fabled Enemies. And on top of that, they had already rounded up almost 100 of these people in that network prior to 9/11. Post 9/11, they rounded up another 20 or so. None of them ever charged. Okay. All of them sent back overseas to Israel without much of a whisper. And that network included what is also known as the quote unquote Israeli art students, but it wasn't just art students. These people were also infiltrating suburban areas via mall kiosks. In fact, before the days of everybody could go get themselves a fun little drone, they had these little zip tie helicopters that you used to see. And the Israelis were basically running kiosks with the zip tie helicopters. Now, that network successfully infiltrated all sorts of government agencies, government agents' homes, and even secret offices that were off the books. So if you've got this network that spans essentially my entire lifetime and beyond, and your quote unquote James Bond or Jason Bourne, if you will, is a notorious pedophile, it's not only not a good look, it's not something you're ever going to admit to. Okay. And I hate to say it like that. I'm not a black-pilled guy. I think that we need to continue to press this issue in the court of public opinion. I know that there have been some email leaks, I think within the last 72 hours in regards to the Ehud Barak and Jeffrey Epstein relationship. I know that Sarah Ferguson is now in the spotlight once again because of her relationship with Epstein via that connection with Prince Andrew. But it is very, very apparent that this guy was working with intelligentsia, not just in blackmail. And when we talk about arms dealing, we could sit here and talk about tragedies, and we could talk about mass shootings, and we could talk about political assassinations like Charlie Kirk all day. One of those bombs at a wedding party kills hundreds of people. Hundreds. And everybody.
It's similar to the pages that apparently you killed a lot of these supposedly terrorists to Israel. And then what I heard
in civilian context, by the way, in full civilian context around other civilians who could not have been targets. Okay, and that just shows
there would have been fallout from that. Like when those pages exploded, no doubt it would have been, some of those explosions would have been in public. It would have maimed or at least killed or at least maimed passers-by, innocent bystanders. Apparently, as well, according to the 60-minute interview, where they almost hilariously had on a Mossad agent wearing a balaclava and sunglasses, and he had his voice. They had a voice changer for him while in post production. Apparently, at the funerals of these alleged terrorists, they also set more bombs off at the funerals to further instill fear and dominance of the sort of power of Mossad and the influence of Israel, which is really quite sickening. Jason? What's your opinion on? Obviously, I don't know you too well. I've not seen you for obviously a long time since the InfoWars. But what's your opinion on Trump and Thomas Massey? Because I saw obviously you did a live video yesterday. I see Massey's in there. But what's your opinion on? Are you a Trump fan? Are you a big Trump fan, or what's your opinion on that?
I'm a realist. Obviously, I think that he was better than dementia Joe Biden, who was not running anything, who clearly had dementia and was installed. I mean, if you didn't realize by watching the Democratic primaries that Joe Biden was gone, you hadn't been paying attention. Joe Biden is actually in my film, Fabled Enemies from 2008, in regards to 9/11, because he met with one of the money men behind 9/11 just afterwards and bragged about it. And that was the head of the Pakistani ISI, General Mahmoud Ahmed. You mentioned Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey is the man. He is probably the most consistent person in all of government at this point, at least on a federal level. Obviously, he's a congressman out of Kentucky, but when I say that, he's not a state congressman or a state senator, which we all have and aren't on that national stage. Trump's a mixed bag. He is the first person in my lifetime that does not seem as bloodthirsty as the other leaders. At the same time, I had great hopes this time around that he was going to be able to do what he said, and that was bring peace to the Middle East once again and end this insane Ukraine-Russian conflict. He has been totally unable to do so. And he is now rebranded the Department of Defense into the Department of War, which is insane. And right now he is speaking at the Department of War. I was watching it just before I came on the broadcast. Hegseth proceeded that he's a smart guy. There's no doubt about that. And he's certainly far enough off the reservation where they tried to shoot him in the head. That is a real thing. They also tried to jail him. But as far as, being completely independent, that's not a real thing either. And as far as being able to be the quote unquote true president and somehow, some way figure out how we don't arm these nations, how we don't drone bomb in Yemen, it's been a complete failure. Okay. At the same time, I think Tulsi Gabbard was a good choice for the DNI. She is imperfect as well. I mean, she gets up there and she talks about how Iran is not really a threat to the United States. And then 6 months later, we're bombing their quote unquote nuclear facilities. We got problems with this administration because you have an administration where you still have like this cult-like following of Trump on both ends, right? You have TDS on one side where you have a guy like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's, in my opinion, his best hire in the administration, has done the most, simply coming out and saying, hey, just like you shouldn't drink alcohol when you're pregnant, acetaminophen probably isn't the thing. They're not taking it off the market. They're simply putting a warning label on it. They're saying it may have something to do with causing autism. And then you have people that are so far gone that they're making videos 7 to 9 months pregnant and dumping Tylenol down their neck, and they're not sick. If you're sick and you're pregnant and you want to take, that's on you. That's fine. If you want to make a show about it or you want to take medicine and you're not sick, you're mentally ill. That's insanity. On the other end, there are some people out there that just think that everything that Trump does is the best thing ever. And I am just not with that. For instance,
no, I know people who, they call themselves QAnon, or I call it QAnonsence, but
I also call it nonsense.
QAnonsence, and they're really hardcore into it. And the last time I did like Trump was in the 2015, 2016 era, when he really was on top form in terms of, calling out the media and all of that. But his first administration, you saw what happened there. And then we were promised in this second, obviously where I do believe he was purposely done over in the 2020 general presidential election, where obviously you clearly see there was some kind of voter corruption going on. You would have thought that he would have learned from this. But what I believe is that I think that after 2020, I think Trump was done. I don't think he was going to be re-elected again. And I think then October the 7th occurred. And I think some kind of deal of some sort was done with Israel, which I do agree with the words that you've been saying regarding Israel, especially with 9/11. And even in 7/7, we had here in the UK, like almost our version of, well, not as but we had another terrorist attack. You probably know 7/7. Where there was attacks, and it was believed that a lot of people, we had an ex-MI5 agent on just previously, that we believed it was also Israel. I mean, Netanyahu was in London on the same day. He was notified by Mossad that there was going to be a terrorism attack before MI5 or MI6 knew anything about it, supposedly. The Jerusalem Post, again, were the first to report, like with Charlie Kirk's assassination. They were the first international world media outlet to release that the 7/7 bombings. Lot of questions to be asked about that, but it's not really spoken about now. But I think there was
jump in on the 7/7 bombings just really quickly, just a quick fact that a lot of people are just simply not aware of. U.S. Special Forces were on the ground in Israel on October 7th. 100%. Like, that's, again, something we don't discuss, is that operation that clearly looks manufactured, clearly looks like a standout. And I got news for everybody. Palestine doesn't have an air force. Somehow they're descending. I mean, literal shooting duck targets, and nothing's done as they parasail in. Okay. And like I said, not only was there U.S. Special Forces on the ground that day, we sent more U.S. Special Forces into Israel immediately. These are these plausible deniability circles that I like to talk about that are inherent in things like Iran-Contra, inherent in things like 9/11. You just mentioned 7/7. A lot of people are unaware that they were running drills just like on 9/11 that mirrored the attacks of 7/7. So on 9/11, there is a multitude of drills, of hijackings going on as the actual hijackings are happening. We know this not only from the audio tapes from NORAD, and when you listen to the initial impact of the plane into the World Trade Center, the first thing the person says is, wait a minute, is this real world or is this exercise? And they say it's real world. Richard Myers, under oath, before the 9/11 Commission, had to admit that we, quote unquote, fought many phantoms that day. These were interjected hijackings on radar that were not real. The denial of any foreknowledge that this could have occurred in the United States is ultimately the most absurd thing you could say. In the summer before 9/11, I believe it was Amalgam Virgo. And on the cover of Amalgam Virgo was Osama bin Laden. Okay. And one of the attacks that was going to take place via Amalgam Virgo was a U.S. commercial flight being hijacked from Alaska and flown into the Capitol. And there's a huge graphic on that as well. When you talk about the 7/7 attacks, I believe it was Peter Powers. I know his last name was Powers. I could be wrong about the first. I'm a little rusty. But he went on radio and television that day and said, I literally have chills. We were running a drill of the exact same thing at the exact same time. When he was followed up on that, he walked into a closet and shut the door. Did not want to answer those questions. He's on tape doing it. So you had drills on both 9/11 and 7/7 that, in my opinion, were absolutely used as a cover for the attacks. Okay. And this is not a new thing. Even the Boston bombings in the United States, they were running a drill of a bomb going off in that area just as it happened. Wash, rinse, repeat. These people are shameless.
It is. I've just got some breaking news here, Jason. Maybe I can get your opinion on it. You can see the screen here. Breaking news: former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair has been formally named as a key member of the Board of Peace.
Yeah, this is extension.
I mean, this is some clown world stuff going on, isn't it? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, it's right here, actually, and it was what I talked about yesterday when they announced this. Trump hails one of the greatest days in civilization as he and Netanyahu reveal plan to end Israel-Hamas war and run Gaza with the help of ex-UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. And I said, I'm sure bringing in a Bush-era war criminal to run Gaza will totally solve everything. I hope that everybody realizes the sarcasm is extremely thick there. The reason that we got Trump in the first place is because people were absolutely and utterly disgusted with the Blair, Cameron, Bush, Cheney, Barack Star era. We didn't like it. We don't want foreign wars. The vast majority of us want to be peaceful. And the idea that they're dredging up somebody like Tony Blair to help is over the top nightmarish, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible, really. I mean, Tony Blair is someone in our history but he just won't go away. He's almost like Dracula. You think you've killed him, and somehow he just comes back. Like this digital. I don't know if you're aware. You probably are. In the UK here, it's our current Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced over the last couple of days that he wants to bring in a digital ID card. Now, Tony Blair, for decades, has been trying to bring this in. He also came back during COVID era to basically try and bring in a digital ID, but just rebranded simply as a health passport. And now we're back again to digital ID stuff. I mean, I don't understand how they think this is going to work, because the whole point of criminal activity is that criminal activity exists basically because they don't respect laws. So no matter what is brought in, the whole idea of a criminal being a criminal is that they don't follow the law. The only people who will be affected by this are the law-abiding people who do follow the law. So it will never actually work on the intended people that it's allegedly supposed to be. I mean, I think I know you and I.
There's actually an extension of that is not getting as much press. Yes, that digital ID is absolutely awful, but this is something that they just announced, and I hope people check it out. Americans traveling to Europe will now have to give up their digital fingerprints under the new rule. So they're already taking a biometric photo of your face and your identification. But now, if Americans want to travel to Europe, they're also going to be giving up their fingerprints. Now, I want this is something that is just not known enough. Okay. And this is an article that is now almost 4 years old. It's on Newsweek. Anybody can go check it out. I want people to take a look at this. Okay. You probably think that you're looking at a hand right here. And this is the program that I brought up to Kash Patel, and he walked off. And then later on, his handler said it was too QAnon for them. Nothing QAnon about that.
Sorry, Jason, it was when he walked off. Was that when he was director of the FBI, or was that
prior to even the election? Probably about a year before the election. He waited till the commercial break, which I had at the time for the show, and he just walked off. He started. I had brought up the fact that it's an art form. It's not even an official government program. What you're looking at here, because you think you're looking at a hand. Let me assure you, you're not. You are looking at a manufactured silicone hand sleeve used to evade fingerprinting and to create fake identities for clandestine travelers. So not only do they have the facial masks and the things like that, and they can disguise you this way, okay? Your biometrics can literally be anybody that they have your thumb and fingerprints. Not only that, if they have your DNA, that thing emits human oils. So it's like you're there. But let me read you, and everybody should read this. It's going to take about 40 minutes to an hour. This is exclusive inside the military's secret undercover army. The first paragraph should say it all. The largest undercover force the world has ever known is the one created by the Pentagon over the past decade. It's now 15 plus years. No oversight, everybody. Some 60,000 people now belong to this secret army, many working under masked identities and in low profile, all part of a broad program called signature reduction. The force, more than 10 times the size of the clandestine elements of the CIA, carries out domestic and foreign assignments, both in military uniform and under civilian cover. In real life and online, this is the Russian bot army they tell you about, sometimes hiding in private businesses and consultancies, some of them household name companies. That means they're in Google, they're in X, they're in Meta, they're in Lockheed Martin, they're in Raytheon, they're in it all, okay? And if you read this article, they have access to everything it takes to create or manipulate an identity. Social security offices, driver's licenses, driver's license plates, all of it is discussed here. So they're literally able to create somebody out of nowhere or mimic somebody if they'd like in this program. And there has been zero government oversight.
I mean, we all know that if they bring in, there's always a black market for anything. There's always ways to get around things, right? And if they bring in this digital ID, I mean, personally, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know if you heard before you came on the show here, is that I do believe that we have, you might know Nigel Farage, a guy Trump might refer to as the Brexit guy, you know, and he's looking to be possibly the next prime minister of the UK here. And I think that basically the civil servants, the permanent government people who are always in office, regardless of what party is the governing party, is that these people are purposely given the current prime minister really bad advice. And especially these people will just read any script that's given to them, essentially. They're just puppets. We all know that. And I don't think Starmer is not competent enough to bring in something like a digital ID. And there'll be too much backlash even if he did. I don't think there's just way to left or right. You know, it doesn't matter. People just don't want this. I've heard one person ever say that this is a good thing, that the digital IDs are coming in. And I think it's purposely been done to usher in Nigel Farage, who ultimately I think is going to be just as controlled as any other previous. I mean, do you have an opinion? Do you know about Nigel Farage? Do you have an opinion on him?
You know, Farage has talked a good game on some, some issues, like you said, Brexit. But at the end of the day, did Brexit really even go through? Right?
No, not really. I always say this is that, yes, on paper, we have left the European Union, but in practicality, in reality, we have not. We still don't have control of our fishing, our seas, basically, for fishing. We don't have the control of our borders. Northern Ireland is technically still in the European Union. So you can argue that England, Scotland, and Wales have left, but Northern Ireland. I mean, you need to have all four to have Great Britain. You need to have, they're made up of those four nations. Then you need to have four of them to make Britain. If you lack one of them, you don't have Britain. You just have three nations that have left. But what we were promised with Brexit never occurred. And I did say, I stood for election at the time, at the 2019 general election. I did say that, if you vote in Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn, you're not going to get it. Especially Boris Johnson. He's been a lifelong Remainer. He's only just suddenly changed to become a Brexiteer over the last shortly after the announcement of who was going to win the vote, the referendum on it. These people are not going to deliver it, and I was proven right on that. We never did get anything from it, but unfortunately, that's just that's unfortunately the way it is. But Jason, just to quickly move on. What's your take on the Charlie Kirk assassination? What's your take on that? What do you think the motive was for it? Do you believe it was that Tyler Robinson chap, or give us your full opinion on it, please?
I would say the jury's out right now. I think a lot of people broke out their jump to conclusions, Mats. I also think there's a lot of insanity just like surrounding any of these large scale events. And when I talk about insanity, just like there are people that have fantasies that Jeffrey Epstein is not dead. He is dead. I promise you. He was not smuggled out there. I saw some, one of the more insane things with that QAnon sense vibe that was put up right after Epstein died was, those ears, and it's Anthony Bourdain in these photos. I mean, these people are legitimate.
I've not heard that one.
Look it up. It's horrible. I mean, these people are out of it. And look, I'm not one of these guys. I've been around a long time, as you know, even prior to Alex Jones. I'm one of the guys that put out the Loose Change documentary on 9/11 all the way back in 2005. So I've been doing this 20 years, and I've seen a lot of infiltration to try to muddy the waters with things like crisis actors and people didn't die at these events. I warned everybody about the Sandy Hook stuff. I actually did my research on that, and there are anomalies and there are questions. There's no question in my mind that not only was the mother killed at home, but that all those kids were killed in those schools. That wasn't a question. Now, as to whether or not Lanza was the only perpetrator, that's a big question. As to whether or not some of those teachers that were killed were actually targeted, that's a real question. As to the assailants that were picked up running into the woods and then after the fact chased in a purple van on the way to Danbury, Connecticut, dressed up like clergy members, that's an open question that nobody seems to ask. With the Kirk murder, I've seen fantasies out there of, Kirk, wasn't really shot. It was AI and holograms, or it was a blood bag. That was insta-death. I tried to stay away from the actual murder of Kirk for about as long as I could. I was in D.C. at the time, and it happened on September 10th. I was hosting the next day a 9/11 Turning the Tide event, where we had people like John Kiriakou, the CIA whistleblower that did time, that blew the whistle on the torture program and the waterboarding. Tucker Carlson was supposed to present his 9/11 documentary, the first part, and speak at the conference virtually. He canceled after the murder. My brother was the one that called me, and he was concerned about my safety because of people like Carlson being there, Kurt Weldon. Ron Johnson actually spoke at the event, who is a senator out of the United States. So, I was extremely upset. And when I saw it, that there's no doubt in my mind that, it's one shot, one kill. I don't know whether Tyler Robinson did this. I would say that anything that's coming to us digitally via text message or Discord group, anything can be spoofed. I've gotten phone calls from a number that it says it's this number. It's not that number. That's old technology. There's certainly some questions about an exit wound if it was a 30-06. There are some questions about some of the videos that are not circulating around as much via the person on the roof and jumping off the roof and then the weapon that they supposedly find. I would say in a crowd of an estimated 3,000 people, there have got to be at least another 10 videos of the actual murder and obviously the surrounding area. We've gotten, I believe, now 4. Well, there's one now from the rear, 4 pretty clear shots of the murder. At the same time, Kirk's own camera is behind him, and then there are other cameras set up by Turning Point USA on the sides. Those videos, of course, have not been released. I think there's some question to the way the crime scene was handled after the fact. And obviously, there's a ton of speculation, the largest out there. And I think there is some validity to it with the possibility of Kirk coming out against Israel. Look, Kirk was not perfect. Let me just say that right now. My biggest issues with Kirk were probably in that of foreign policy. Kirk's another one. He did not walk off my show. He canceled the day he was supposed to come on my show. So I did have him booked about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. He didn't show up. I'm
always very suspicious, Jason. I know people do obviously have reasons to counsel every now and then, but I, like you, have been doing this now for a few years now, not as long as you, obviously, but we have had people. I work with another news network called Unity News Network, and I always say it's like the InfoWars of the UK almost. But I'm not too. I want to ask you about InfoWars as well, just before we go, because I want to talk about some of the recent stuff there. But I don't want to say it just now. But I noticed that because UNN has a bit of a reputation for being. There's people in the comments here asking when David Clues is back. He's the head honcho of it. We become a bit of a reputation of not really pulling our punches and asking questions that are not being asked by other organizations, even in the alternative world. I mean, as well, there's a lot of softball interviews being sort of given out. So we noticed that there are a lot of people who they'll say that they'll come on and then they always cancel at the last minute. And I can't help but feel that these certain individuals that we have got to know, that they're all part of a certain clique in a way, and they're a certain group, and they're quite squirrely people who don't like to be asked questions. Do you know what I mean? In certain
No,
ways.
listen, it's a valid concern and it's a real one. So, you know, in the 2 years up to the run of this second presidency of Trump, even prior to his quote unquote announcement, I ended up on something called the Reawaken America Tour. And this was very heavy Trump. I mean, Eric Trump would show up. Don Jr. would show up. Lindell was there. Kash Patel spoke. I probably spoke at 10 to 12 of these. I actually did get an interview with Rudy Giuliani, which is a must watch. Last October, actually. It's been about a year. I need to get Rudy back on. But I would encourage people to go watch that. But I was behind the scenes with a lot of these people. I mean, I was on stage with Michael Flynn, General Michael Flynn, many times. I was not there to cheerlead for Trump. I happened to be there because I had the guy who had started this thing, Clay Clark, on my show. And we were actually talking about Trump. And this, again, was before he said he was going to run again. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see maybe a Rand Paul or a Mike Lee. So we were back and forth. Then he came on and I began to talk about Elon Musk and who he really is. And he's the largest defense contractor in the United States, maybe globally. He's a Defense Department frontman. He's not running X, SpaceX, Neuralink, Tesla, the Boring Company. That's not real. Okay.
No, I do say that every now and then. It's like, this guy is meant to be a CEO and running all of these companies. The guy doesn't seem to do a day's work. He's always on Twitter or something, arguing with someone.
Playing Diablo. It's ridiculous. Okay. He's a spokesperson for transhumanism, for the militarization of space. We're not going to the moon or Mars. That's imagination land. We're weaponizing space in now its fourth generation since the Strategic Defense Initiative, also known as Star Wars, which now, you know, the folklore or the official narrative is it just never worked. That's not real either. Totally worked. The Soviets have a competitive edition. In fact, prior to the Ukraine-Russian conflict, anybody can look this up. Musk got in it. First of all, Musk challenged Putin to one-on-one combat like he was going to fight him. Okay, totally ridiculous. But then he got into a Twitter battle with the head of their space agency. And the head of their space agency says, listen, we can literally nuke you from space. And that was before the Russian nukes in space. They were going back and forth about it. Starlink is a Trojan horse civilian system with a DoD back door in it. And the largest concentration of Starlink satellites, you know where they're located? Take a wild guess.
Please inform us.
Ukraine. And the reason that they're in Ukraine, even though they've moved to fiber optics more, they were essentially not only the communication systems, but they would hook into the Ghost and the Sidewinder drones for full-on attack. Now, when they launched Starlink satellites, they also launched the classified DARPA program called Blackjack, which are the official spy satellites of the United States. Now, going on over a year and a half, Musk was actually commissioned to build the next generation spy satellite network. It's funny, I had a gentleman by the name of Greg Autry on the program. He had authored the book Red Moon Rising with a Trump official, Peter Navarro. And we just had one of the most incredible conversations. Number one, he doesn't get a lot of people that interview him that go beyond the surface level of what they're, we're going to Mars. You know, he's used to the softball interviews. So when I started bringing up to him hydrogels that are on the ISS, when I started bringing up, you know, Star Wars, space warfare, he was actually very, very engaged. And at one point, I brought something up and he goes, well, NASA's not involved in classified programs. Literally, within 3 minutes, I bring up that Elon Musk has now been commissioned to build the next spy satellite network. And he goes, well, I can't comment on classified programs. So it was just one of those, like, right in your face, double talk interviews that was super interesting.
Pretty much exposed the guy, yeah. That's
I mean, look, you know, I think a lot of these people are well-meaning, but we have to take everything with a grain of salt. You know, you mentioned even the alternative media not touching subjects. There are no third rail subjects over here. You know, one of the things that I was at the forefront of that somehow has gotten swept under the rug and continues to be, and it really is upsetting to me, is something that's a little bit more on the peripheral, but certainly now more in the forefront when we're talking about European politics, is that Conor McGregor is a brutal, violent, serial rapist. Okay. The incident in 2018 in Dublin, in that hotel in which he lost a civil case, he hospitalized that girl. He not only hospitalized that girl, she had to have a tampon surgically removed from her cervix with forceps. Okay. She was beaten bloody. All right. He should have been criminally charged. In fact, she was offered more money than she eventually won, which was a pittance, to just let it go away. Just prior to that trial taking place, go look it up. There was a home invasion at her house where her current boyfriend was stabbed, and they never arrested the 3 guys that did it. Okay. McGregor is not a good person. He should be in prison. That's not the only sexual assault that he has been accused of. And now you're going to have this guy not only supposedly fighting on the White House lawn, but running for the Prime Minister of Ireland. No, thank you. Like there, and I'll say this, you know, from time to time, I still host the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show. The last time I hosted that was just prior to the trial, where I did an hour on McGregor. And Jones, it was on a Friday. Jones was so upset with me that on the Sunday show, he went off about it. He's like, I love Jason Bermas, but we're on the verge of World War III. Does McGregor like to rough up women? Sure. But like, whatever. I will say this. Again, I haven't hosted since then. They did contact me. Again, it was in October, so almost a year ago, to host again. I couldn't host because I was down in New York for one of my buddy's funerals. So I just wasn't able to do it. At the same time, you know, I've seen, you know, stories from InfoWars afterwards that are somehow celebrating McGregor and, you know, the idea that he's going to be on this international stage. People like Tucker Carlson, you know, who are sitting in a Masonic lodge promoting McGregor in an interview, not asking any questions about the sexual assault. You know, a lot of people think that Candace Owens is doing some good work. And I think that she's done some good work on NASA and possibly the Kirk murder. At the same time, she's gone on like the McGregor apology tour and acted like this woman's a liar. Like, a lot of these people not only have blind spots, they do have agendas, right? I want to give them.
I do think so. The Candace Owens stuff, I'm quite skeptical about, especially if you know about, no doubt you probably know about her husband, and no doubt you know about her husband and his link to all of these big.
Again, with the Macron thing, like, that was another thing that helped me kind of like launch onto the Reawaken America tour. I remember we were talking Macron and foreign policy with Clay Clark, and I didn't bring up, you know, the idea that, you know, Macron's wife was a quote unquote man. I just brought up the factual information that it was his teacher when he was 14 years old. And they were having a sexual relationship while this is a grown person and this is a teenager and this is who he married. Okay. The other stuff, hey, might be real. I don't know. I'll be honest. I have not dug that deeply into it. I stick to what I can prove. I wouldn't be shocked if she was right, but it's certainly not my hill to die on. I think, again, just the idea that they were having this inappropriate relationship when the guy couldn't even drive is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's like I think, there's too much of that. Again, this is me going down a sort of conspiratorial route where I think personally, I really don't trust Candace Owens at all, especially like she's never really apologized for any of that. So the social autopsy, program that she created, basically a doxing program to reveal, people online who like to keep their anonymity, and just, go by different, there's people doing a chat here and all that. and it was basically just a spying, a really like, you know, trying to dox people and kind of ruin their lives. And she's come from that kind of background. I really don't trust her at all. I think really a lot of it is to discredit people like yourself, people who are hardworking and actually do a lot of good work. And I think then she sort of purposely, because she's massive in America, isn't she? I didn't quite realize just how big her channel was and how much of a reach that she has. She is basically, she's not alternative media. She's pretty much, I know she's on YouTube, etc., and Rumble, but she's practically mainstream by the numbers that she manages to drag in somehow. But I feel as though that there's something a bit more, especially again with the husband. What's her husband's name again? I forget his name. Is it? I can't remember it now, top of my head. But his connections with people like JD Vance and other Peter Thiel and all of these individuals, and it's all just a bit, I don't know, a bit too much for my liking personally. Just to get back to the Charlie Kirk stuff, so I do want to talk about, like, just before you go, the InfoWars stuff is that I personally believe that I think that Charlie Kirk is dead. I think he was killed. I think that Israel do have motive as to the reason why they killed him, because I think that he was obviously a big promoter of Israel. I think there's a lot that, like, I don't like the idea that Charlie Kirk was going from campus to campus in America, basically indoctrinating young students who don't really know what the world's really like, to basically ultimately worship Israel. I see that as as a type of espionage. I see that as, you know, a foreign power, a foreign country out there, foreign government, basically paying an individual, yes, he might be American, but still paying someone to basically go and do the work of Israel, to basically have young people essentially love Israel, turning via the vehicle of Turning Point USA. I think that you saw a few days, obviously, leading up to that, he was starting to be quite critical about whether his Christian consciousness sort of got to him, and perhaps he was starting to question a few things. I don't know. From October the 7th, he was starting to question essentially his paymasters, I believe. And
let me just say this about it. You know, in a world where he doesn't get shot on September 10th, on September 11th, Tucker Carlson releases that 9/11 documentary, and there's no doubt in my mind that Charlie Kirk also puts it out on social media. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for all of her faults, MGT, she put it out there. Obviously, you know, the Tucker documentary, Tucker had just gone on Piers Morgan earlier in the week talking about the upcoming release of that documentary and talking about the Israeli aspect in the foreign government and the agents that were picked up that day. You know, as far as the motive from Israel, you know, I would say that the hardest core piece of evidence would be Harrison Smith putting out the fact that basically at Ron Paul's 90th birthday, he talked to Charlie's good friend, and this person said that Charlie was worried that Israel might take him out. Now, this is prior to that. Harrison Smith has confirmed it. Obviously, we also know about this meeting with Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman has responded to it. The big thing about that meeting is also, you know, people like Tim Pool were at that meeting, you know, and I've been on Timcast. I'm just saying that shows you that type of influence. When you are talking about mainline kind of foreign policy interests, I mean, Israel's got their money in everything. And some people taking money may not even know it's Israeli money. At the same time, I think, just like I was discussing, I do think there are blind spots. You know, being amongst those conservative circles, they're just the diehards, man. I mean, there are
here in the UK. There's people here in the UK that they just cannot understand they can't see it. They can't see the influence of Israel. That is, again, a massive blind spot. They cannot.
Man, there is a literal Christian Zionists out there, in the sense that, you know, and this isn't political to them. I want to make that extremely clear. There are a lot of Christians out there that want Israel to become the greater Israel. They want the Dome of the Rock destroyed. They want the third temple built, not because they're Jewish, but in their book, they think that that is the beginning of Revelations and essentially the Antichrist and the return of Jesus. So they want it. Like, they don't look at it as a political thing. They don't look at it. They say it's already written. So they enable it. You know, they believe their book says it. And that is one of the major reasons that I am not a religious man. I don't sit here.
I was just about to say, Jason, that I mean, I was brought up, I was baptized and brought up Catholic, but I ultimately feel that, I know it's going to upset a lot of people on the chat here, but I ultimately do think that Christianity is essentially a psyop. I think it's used as a way to control non-Goyim, non-Jewish people, aka Goyim, to basically ultimately worship and worship Jewish people, but also justify the actions of the state of Israel. So no matter what Israel does in the world, it's okay because they're the chosen people and they can do what they want because they're essentially ordained by God.
I'll just say that the chosen people are everybody. We're all chosen. There is no race or religion out there that, you know, ultimately can do no wrong. Okay, first of all, if you're a human being, you're going to make mistakes. You are flawed, period. I don't like taking hot steaming dumps on people's religion like you. You know, I was raised heavily Christian. I've got a lot of Christian family members. But I mean, amongst those Christian family members, you forget about just the Israel thing. They're done. Their brains are mush in a lot of ways. You know, I was on the phone with my mother this week, and my uncle had a heart attack the week before. Okay. Now, my contact for my uncle would be my cousin, and usually I contact her through Facebook. And I noticed that she deactivated her Facebook account. Okay, so I couldn't get in touch with her. I couldn't see how her uncle was doing. So I asked my mother, and I said, well, why did she? I'd assumed it was because of her dad. I go, well, she had deactivated her Facebook. I assume it was because of that. And she goes, no, she made a post about Charlie Kirk. And I go, what? I said, what do you mean she made a post about Charlie Kirk? And she goes, well, Jason, she's married to a black man. I go, yes. And well, she's got black children, Jason. I go, okay. And then she goes, well, Charlie Kirk was a racist. I went off on my mother. I was like, Mom, you're disgusting. I go, I don't know what brain damage you have and that you instilled in other parts of my family. Listen, I'm just so everybody knows, my other sister, I have two sisters, both have black children. Okay. She's not older. I'm the oldest, but she's the older sister. I help raise her 14 and 16-year-old black daughters. Race isn't really an issue in our house. We are in a largely rich white neighborhood, great school system. They're going to deal with racism anywhere, right? And it happens, and we have to have a conversation here and there. But I'm a content of somebody's character. And I have never seen. Did I disagree with Kirk on a lot of foreign policy? You bet your ass. Did he make some off-color remarks about equal opportunity and things like that? Maybe. Have I ever heard him say something racist? Never. There is a certain percentage of people, not only with the TDS thing, that have been race baited, not just in that issue, but they've been taught how to be victims of everything. Okay. Everything is surrounded about these identity politics and your privilege, et cetera. It's all bullshit. Okay. Like, people have to get back to actual interactions with one another. That does not mean that you are blind to your surroundings. That doesn't mean that you can't identify what neighborhood you're in or what a group of people, like if I see a bunch of skinheads approaching me, I'm also going to take note, right? If I'm out late and I just see a group of teenagers, doesn't matter what color of their skin, and they start approaching me in a manner that makes me feel uncomfortable. We all have instincts. They've tried to flip our instincts into insanity to try to divide us. You know, like I told you, I was in DC just 3 weeks ago. And the big hubbub about Trump was that he militarized DC. He brought in the National Guard. It's the worst thing ever, etc. Now, I held my judgment. I don't necessarily love military on the streets, although I was at the Stop the Steal rallies in December. I was there at January 6th. In December, there were tons of National Guard everywhere. There was police presence everywhere. January 6th was a different story, okay? After January 6th, when Biden was in office, I have never seen D.C. more fenced in and police state-like, especially during the COVID-19 84 nightmare, when it was so much more desolate and abandoned. You know, D.C. is a bumping city. So I was there. I've been going to D.C. for 20 years now. Okay, I want to make that extremely clear. D.C. was the cleanest I have ever seen it. Whatever he did with that National Guard, he was absolutely the right thing to do. It's not even a question. The homeless problem was gone. I was out late at night. Tons of people everywhere. It felt much safer in D.C. I was kind of shocked. I'm not gonna lie. Now, one of the other things that I did take away from D.C., I probably had not been there in 1.5 to 2 years, was the Muslim population has totally exploded in DC. You know, a lot of people are talking about London, rightfully so, about Paris, rightfully so. And look, DC is a place where you've got the embassies. You've certainly got a very rich and astute population out in Georgetown and the suburbs areas of Maryland and Virginia. But you also have very ghetto areas where you have, you know, subsidized housing, crime, etc. Alexandria is around there, all that. I have never in my life been in an area where, first of all, I'm not the whitest guy in the world. I was the whitest guy in 2 separate Walmarts, one in the heart of DC where you have to park underground, and then I went to one in Alexandria, and it wasn't Hispanics. Now, again, I live in Iowa, but I'm in the Quad Cities, which is a satellite city of Chicago. I moved here from New York, even upstate New York. I've been around immigrant Hispanic populations pretty much all my life, right? And I've seen them grow and grow. Barely any Hispanics in either of the Walmarts. Unbelievably Muslim, to the point where the vast majority of the people working there were women in hijabs, and the language that I heard more than anything was Arabic. People were speaking Arabic openly to each other. Like, I was kind of blown away by it. I'm be honest. It just shows you, number one, population migration is an absolute real thing. It happens in an instant, and it's largely not discussed. And whenever, you know, someone does discuss it, you're a bigot or a racist. Just like whenever somebody, you know, seems to want to do the common sense thing with crime and utilize the tools in the correct way. You know, ICE, listen, I don't even think ICE should exist because Homeland Security shouldn't exist. We had a border patrol, we had an immigration system, we had deportations before Homeland Security. We need to deport.
That was born out of 9/11 as well, wasn't it? I believe. Am I going to that one?
Sure was. Old Deutschland Security couldn't be there without 9/11. So yeah, there are problems there. But for instance, and I know that this hasn't been confirmed, and maybe you hadn't heard this yet, but Trump has essentially said the next big city that he's going to bring the military to is Portland. And essentially, this was in response to a rapper named Ice Cube, you know, also big actor. No, he was out there and his tour bus got torched. Somebody lit it on fire. And the speculation is it wasn't an attack on Ice Cube. Instead, they thought that was an ICE vehicle You can't. And
Wow.
fact checkers came out. There's no evidence of that, but I've seen no evidence to the contrary. Again, I'm not breaking out my jump to conclusions, Matt. I'd like to see what Ice Cube has to say about it, etc. But I mean, think about that mental illness and insanity, if it's true.
Yeah, Ice Cube apparently is quite a he's quite an awake individual, you could say. I've seen him speak about why he was on. I think he was on Piers Morgan. I don't know if you know Piers Morgan, famously Alex Jones.
I watched that interview.
Famously, Alex Jones had an argument with him on Piers Morgan's US TV show. And a famous one that went viral about you won't take our guns. What was it? 16? What's it? 16.
Answer to 1984 or 1776. You can wear your Jolly Roger. I'll wear my Patriot gear. We'll get in there in a boxing match. I know.
Yeah.
I
remember that famous one. Piers Morgan. Ice Cube said he turned down an acting role that was worth millions of dollars because they wanted him to be vaccinated with the COVID vaccination. He said, "No, I'm not taking any of that." So there's something a little bit. Maybe that was revenge from that. I don't know. Jason, I want to just quickly. Obviously, we mentioned Alex Jones there. There's been in the recent just before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Obviously, there was a big hoo-ha about Owen Schroyer, who's one of the other presenters of or X now, InfoWars. There was a bit of online internet drama where Owen Schroyer left and Alex Jones then went on one of his live shows, I think of his son and Harrison Smith you mentioned earlier, and he really went off emotionally saying all... What's your? What happened with? We've had David Knight on before as well. I assume you worked with David Knight at one point.
Nope.
And he had a few.
Never met David. The only time I met David was very, very briefly in 2017, just before I got back into the arena. I was running a bar at the time, and basically I was running a bar. And it was Bilderberg time of the year. That's usually about May into June. And I was in the morning. I just done all my work. I went online and I was like, where is Bilderberg this year? And it just happened to be in Chantilly, Virginia again. It was about a 5-hour drive from where I'd been. And I had gone there in, I believe it was 2012 and covered it. And actually, I was at InfoWars, I believe, in 2008, and I was the substitute host for Alex Jones. So I was hosting the Alex Jones show when Alex went to Chantilly, Virginia there. So I thought, wow, I need to go to this, right? So I actually contacted my friend Luke Radowski, the head of wearechange.org.
Yeah, that's the guy who's on Tim Pool's show.
Well, he's not on Tim Pool anymore. I think he's doing stuff with Jeremy from the Quartering, but he also has his own thing. Yes, he's was one of the hosts with Tim Pool as well. And so I contact him, and he's like, "Yep, I'm in a car right now with Tim Pool, with the Dollar Vigilante, and we're meeting Dan Dix there." So I went there, and I was extremely disappointed. InfoWars was not there, and Luke called them out on that. It was my first time meeting people like Jack Posobiec, who tried to shout me down with a megaphone. I then got into a debate with Jack. And, again, I know that he was small back then. He became huge. I think I made him look foolish. At that time, there were 5 representatives of the Trump administration in this meeting. They had just cut the Saudi Arabian arms deal. You had Liddell, McMaster. You mentioned Peter Thiel. That was his technology secretary at that point. So getting back to David Knight, essentially, Luke went online, shamed InfoWars. And it was actually the first time that I'd met Harrison Smith on the peripheral because he was a camera guy. They showed up Sunday morning, which basically people were already leaving. Bilderberg was over, right? It starts Thursday. Sunday morning as they're driving out. And my words to David Knight were, "Yeah, it's pretty much over, David. Good luck, and I'll see you later." Other than that, we've never spoken. And I follow David. I watch his stuff.
Is he well? Is David Knight well? I heard he had some medical. He had some. Is he okay? Is he still doing a live show?
That is something that I may be unaware of. I had been watching him on Rockfin. I know when he was at InfoWars, I believe he did have a heart attack at that time. He had to take some time off. I'm pretty sure you can look into that. He may be having other health issues.
No, I mean, recently I've been on his show a couple of times. There's always been a different presenter, and I've heard something about he's having health issues, but I don't know. But moving on from that, but what was so obviously you worked with Alex Jones, because obviously when David Knight came on, he obviously didn't have too many positive words for Alex Jones. I know they fell out, and it was all about. Basically, Alex, I think, has this business model that he needs to promote Trump, and I think it is because obviously there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money to be made if you grift for Trump, if you shield for Trump, whatever you want to call it. And I think Alex, especially with his possible financial issues due to the whole Sandy Hook civil case and all of that, I think perhaps he has made a business decision to basically be Team Trump in order to, because, the MAGA crowd, the QAnon crowd, it's a very big market. And I think if you do obviously promote Trump, I think you can possibly make a bit more money than you do if you don't shield for Trump. And David Knight's sort of belief of that was that they had a meeting or like a little conversation, and basically Alex had this idea that we're going to continue to promote Trump, and David Knight said, well, no, if he does good, I'll promote it. I'll praise him. If he does bad, I will criticize him. And I think that was basically, from what I understand, where they parted ways in that sense. Now, Owen Schroyer, who's recently left, I think over at least a year, you watch Owen Schroyer's show. You watch Alex Jones' show, and Trump's going to come, he's going to save us, it's going to be great, and all of this sort of stuff. Elon's coming along, he's going to save us too. And Owen Schroyer was basically the opposite kind of message. So what's your take on all that? What's your opinion on Alex Jones and the whole, and also with Schroyer and Jones?
I don't know that it's a business decision. I think that there is a very real thing that, I'm going to be doing an independent media alliance broadcast later today with people like James Corbett and The Last American Vagabond. And it's going to be on free speech. And, we often talk about the administrations and whether there's anything different between, a Trump administration or a Kamala Harris administration. I do truly think there is a difference. Obviously you don't get the J6 pardons. I don't think you get the Ross Ulbricht thing. You certainly don't get Kennedy. There's a lot of things that you don't get. And you can sway that administration. I mean, think about it. It went from the Epstein files are a hoax to all of a sudden the DOJ is meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, and then they're moving her from the prisons. And, Massey is able to, get some traction with these Epstein files because you have the true believers, not just in Trump, but in this idea that this Republican Party is a lot different from the neocons, right? There were like those certain people prior to Trump during the Bush administration, like the Dennis Kuciniches of the world, the Mike Gravells of the world, that certainly were not warmongers in that party. So I think currying favor is much more likely, other than a profit motive. I think that, as far as a profit motive, Alex Jones is Alex Jones. He's a meme at this point. He's got his hardcore audience. I don't know that more dollars roll in one way or the other. I think that he could turn against Trump all the way, like he did very briefly in his first run when you had the non-chemical attack in Duma, and all of a sudden, we were bombing parts of Syria, and Jones was going off on James Mattis, calling him Emperor Palpatine, and cursing. So I think that it is somewhat different. Although I'll say this, I haven't been in any meetings. I haven't been to the InfoWars studio since 2010. I've had very limited interactions with Alex Jones. In fact, if you want to see us get back together, it's a funny story. I was in DC, yet again, this is just prior to COVID. This is in 2020, February of 2020. One of the times that I actually did run into Owen Schroyer personally, and I've had him on the program as well. And essentially, me and Rob Dew were on camera, and we were talking about the Syria incident and the fact that there was no chemical attack. And I was talking about the OPCW, the Office of the Proliferation of Chemical Weapons, and their leaked report to WikiLeaks, which showed there was no attack. In the middle of that, Jones jumped in. The only reason I was at this hotel, I was there for a Julian Assange, Free Assange event, and I saw Alex Jones was going to put on a free speech event, and people like, Gavin McInnes was there, Nick Fuentes was there, Millie Weaver at the time had worked for Jones. She was there, all these people, right? So I'm just in the hallway. I think Lee Stranahan was there, Patrick Howley, and Jones is like, "You remember when you begged for your job back, Bermas?" So you can watch it. And I obviously did not beg for my job back. You can watch. I go, "You mean when I asked for my job back? He had brought me on for Sandusky." Okay. And afterwards I said to him, I wanted back in. And Jones, literally, this is Alex Jones, everybody. And you can watch the video where we kind of get back together. He goes, "Say please." And so I go, "Please?" That's me begging for my job back. I didn't email him. I didn't call him. I didn't ask again. He had me say please. I said please. That should give you the mindset of Alex Jones. Mm-hmm. So I go, "Yeah." I said,
he begged me.
Yeah, he begged me. I beg no one. I beg no man. Okay, yeah.
Everything's over exaggerated with Alex
Jones. Think about that. Like
he got on his knees and he wept.
Yeah, like it's ridiculous. Me and Jones used to be close. I spent a Thanksgiving at his house with his family. His father did my teeth. Okay, you always hear about dentist David Jones. Great man. Loved his father. I love Alex. We start going back and forth because this free speech event that he was having was because Roger Stone was going to jail. Okay, so this was really an event for Roger Stone because they had also in the background had a little bit of a falling out, and he was trying to get that back together because that happens with Alex Jones. So we're sitting again. Anybody can watch the video. And I just keep pressing Alex. I go, "Listen, Alex," I go, "you're bigger than O'Reilly ever was. You would hold your feet to the fire." I go, "If they put Assange away in prison, is that the end of free speech?" He answers the question. He has to go to the thing. I flipped that entire event into an Assange event. Almost every speaker up there had to talk about Assange. Rob Dew and I, who's still his main producer, I was in InfoWars before Rob Dew. He had been hired, so we worked together. We've remained really friendly. I said, "Rob, see if he'll do my show." So months later, I think in April, Alex did end up coming on my show. We had a great broadcast. And from then on, they started contacting me and having me do the fourth hour. Now, you bring up Schroyer. Schroyer is the host after the Alex Jones show. I had done a fourth hour on Elon Musk and the whole thing, just savaging him on the transhumanism, everything that we were talking about today, defense contracting. And Schroyer, I remember like his first lines. He goes, "Well, you see, we've got different opinions. We got somebody who's not Elon Musk. I happen to disagree with him." All these guys over there, they're imperfect. We're all imperfect, but they were promoting guys like Bill Barr. They are promoting guys like Elon Musk.
Bill Barr. Now, that whole weird connection with Epstein, with Bill Barr. His dad apparently hired Jeffrey Epstein. Bill Barr's dad apparently hired Jeffrey Epstein in this elite top school.
Bill
Barr's dad wrote a really strange novel about
space relations,
human trafficking in space. So it's totally different. Go on.
Bill Barr. People need to really look at Bill Barr. Okay, Bill Barr and Robert Mueller were buddies. They worked together. Okay, Bill Barr was the youngest attorney general ever under George H.W. Bush. okay? And he got there because he was Central Intelligence Agency, essentially right out of school. He was actually CIA before he was a lawyer. He passes the bar exam. He becomes a lawyer. He works for the Central Intelligence Agency. He's supposedly a fixer for the Central Intelligence Agency. In one of the books from one of the pilots on Iran-Contra, they say that Bill Barr was actually Robert Johnson, the fixer in Mena, Arkansas, for that horrific event that kind of blew the lid on the Iran-Contra connection there. It was also widely reported and then retracted that Bill Barr went to MCC while Epstein was there. The New York Post put that story out, then had to retract it. And just last week, it came out, as you may know, the first Epstein suicide attempt was anything but. Epstein had told his lawyer, other prison guards, and officials that he was attacked by his cellmate at the time, Nicholas Tartiglione, a now quadruple murderer convict. He was an ex-cop that executed people in a drug deal in I think it was a farm, upstate New York farm. Okay. Now, why do I bring up Bill Barr? Nobody seems to talk about that. They act like that was a first suicide attempt. Bill Barr, in closed door hearings with the oversight committee, was asked about that and said that he was aware that Epstein had said he was strangled, but all the indications were that his mindset was suicidal at the time. So it was totally dismissed. Bill Barr, I could play the video right now. It'd be easy for me to find because I've played it so many
Jason,
times.
I would. This has been a really fascinating conversation, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to end it because I'm 4 minutes into, and I think there might be someone wanting to cut a new show, next show wanting to start.
Gotcha.
Jason, it's been absolutely fascinating. I wish we could talk even longer, but do come on again, please. I've just put your Twitter and YouTube channel into the comments here. If people want to follow, I've definitely subscribed to it now. We'll be watching more of your stuff. Very fascinating stuff. One last question, Jason. Someone's asked me to desperately ask you this. Is Alex Jones Bill Hicks? Yes or no?
100% no. And hold on. The connection is a guy named Kevin Booth, who was both Bill Hicks's manager and also had a connection to Joe Rogan, that whole clique, that's late 90s clique that they got together in a thing called Sacred Cow. Kevin Booth was the best man at Alex Jones's wedding. Kevin Booth also has done a documentary on Bill Hicks, but he used to be Alex Jones's cameraman. They're absolutely not the same person, and that's the type of insanity we need to get away from.
I think there's a bit of tongue-in-cheek there, but Jason, thank you very much for coming on, mate. Do come on again. I've got to head off, guys. Thank you very much. Take care, all. See you later, Jason. Take care. See ya. Bye-bye.